Good morning. Good morning. This is a meeting of the House Criminal Law Subcommittee. We have two bills on our docket today. We are going to go ahead and start with the person in position of authority bill. That is Senate Bill 21, I believe. And so this is the bill that deals with expanding the exception to Maryland's statutory age of consent when you have people in a position of authority over the minor. And we sent it over in a different posture than what the Senate is sending back, but it sounds like the Senate has adopted amendments that were worked out more or less between our two committees, Judiciary and Judicial Proceedings. And so it sounds like this is the compromise that we're attempting to move with. If you could put the reprint up on the screen. Great. Claire, our committee counsel, do you want to just briefly describe what these changes have done to the bill?
Sure. So if you go down to page 4 of the reprint, it there on after line 3, we add back in government workers. It's my understanding that the Senate really wanted to prohibit this type of behavior between a member of the General Assembly and pages. So that's why the Senate wanted that back in. The reprint does retain the structure of the House bill that we developed with the definition of program, just to make the language simpler and to eliminate some technical flaws that were in the bill as introduced. If you go down to page 5, right there after, you'll see the 6 years in both here and down below. That's creating a 6-year age gap for the program offenders. Now, for the people who work for a school, current law is retained, which is that they just have to be 21. But for the people who work for programs, as we've defined it, there's a 6-year age gap in this version. And that was, it's my understanding, that was something that was important to the Senate. And continuing down on page 5, keep going, this non-merger language at the right here in italics, that's slightly different than was in our version, but it's it has the same effect. It's just in the paragraph 2, it's a little bit closer to some standard language that's in our bill drafting manual, and the Attorney General's office has said that they are okay with this language. It achieves the same goal. And then, as you can see, the so-called look back provision is out of the bill. That was where the original bill on the House version had said if a student was participating in a program or enrolled at a school at the time that the person in position of authority was there, that would also be prohibited. And my understanding is that the Senate just was not comfortable with that at all. So that's out of the bill.
Delegate Embry.
Thank you. Claire, I apologize. I was looking between the screen and what was just sent around, but It's now a 22-year age for someone who is a supervisor in a program, not a school.
Yeah, for somebody who works for a program, they have to be at least 22, but there's a 6-year age gap.
In addition.
So, yeah, so if, and I put that, I didn't want to be confusing by putting the 22 there, but I just wanted to be parallel with the current law. So if the child is 16, say they're 16 years and 1 day, so 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, the person in a position of authority would have to be 22 years and 1 day old. But if, say, the child is 17 and 364 days, the person in a position of authority would have to be 23 years and 364 days old.
And if they were 21, they wouldn't be liable.
That's correct.
And where did the 22 come from?
Well, that's just based on the 6-year. The main thing is the 6-year. The Senate wanted there to be a 6-year gap. And so you got to be at least 22 to have a 6-year gap.
Because they're focusing on the 16. So they're keeping this, okay, the school's the same, but they're, okay, I understand. Thank you.
Mhm.
Got it. Thank you.
Move favorable, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, that was Delegate Grammer. Delegate Kaufman, you were breaking up when you just spoke.
Yes, after Delegate Grammer, I move favorable.
Well, we need to move the amendment first, but hold on. Let's Delegate Grammer.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment, being where we're at in session, I think the play is probably to accept the agreement. I think they've accomplished most of what we're looking to get done here, so I'd move the amendment.
All right, so I'll take these as a motion and a second on the amendment. Is there any further discussion on the Senate, the JPR amendment to this bill? Okay, and sorry, we're just dealing with the Senate bill today, correct?
Well, this actually, the Senate, so if we agreed to this, then when the House bill comes over, we would just concur.
Got it. But for today, all we're doing is, do we need to amend this, or is it coming over in amended form?
The House bill would be coming over in amended form, assuming there's no floor amendments on the
So
Senate.
we have to amend the Senate bill to agree with.
Right,
the
that's
change.
correct. But I would say, just let's wait until the House bill fully passes the Senate, just to make sure there's no floor amendments, which I don't expect, but we could do whatever you all wanted.
Mr. Chair, can I make a recommendation?
Yes.
Assuming that this is what the version that the Senate has agreed to, I say we pass it out of subcommittee. Maybe we let the chair know that we want to make sure that there's not going to be any differences, so that we could hold it for a few hours before maybe voting on it tomorrow in full committee. But I think we need to get it out of subcommittee now. And if there's any amendment,
Yeah.
maybe deal with that in full committee.
Yeah, okay, great. So we are adopting an amendment on the bill. All in favor of that amendment, raise your hand or say aye.
I can't raise my hand, but I.
Does anyone want to be recorded in opposition? Okay, great. Is there a motion on the bill?
Move
Move
favorable.
favorable, Mr. Chair.
Second.
All right, all in favor, raise your hand. Anyone opposed?
I.
Great. Okay, excellent. Let's move on to the body cam bill. This was Senator Reedy's bill. And I apologize, let me read the bill number out loud. It is SB 330. This one deals with body cam procurement and is attempting to get the state to negotiate larger contracts on behalf of local police departments to try and achieve some savings and to study ways to do this more broadly in the future. I believe the posture we're in right now is the Senate has adopted amendments to the bill that are the same that the House has adopted, but we had a last minute request to consider an additional amendment from Axon, the body cam, one of the major body cam vendors in the state. So I guess I think we should adopt the amendments that make the bills the same first. And once we do that, we can discuss the request for the additional amendment. And again, the amendment that the Senate put on, I believe, is similar, the same as what we did and has been agreed to by all the parties and should not be controversial.
Move to adopt the Senate amendments.
Second.
Okay, so all in favor of the amendment, raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. So let me ask this, Chris, do we have anyone that's here to speak in favor of the Axon amendment?
That I do not know.
Do we have Delegate Lewis here?
I'm trying to check. I don't know that we do. Claire, I believe you talked to his chief of staff. Is that correct?
Yes. What actually happened is that when our subcommittee took this bill up previously, there were two amendments because Delegate Lewis was negotiating with stakeholders, different groups of stakeholders, including, I guess, Axon and also DGS. And so the different groups requested different amendments. And so he had submitted both amendments to our subcommittee, and we adopted both of those sets of amendments, but the Senate did not adopt the set that had been requested by DGS. So this additional set of amendments is just the same DGS request. And it's just basically, it seems to me that it's just kind of rewording part of it to a wording that they prefer, and then requiring DGS to publish all the contracts on the eMaryland marketplace.
So that's the second amendment that's new and different than what we did.
It's not different than what the subcommittee did. The subcommittee
Right.
already accepted it, but it's new. It's not on the Senate third reader.
Got it. Okay, so this, yeah, Sarah, Delegate Bartlett.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand. So in the materials that was sent around to us on the document that says Amendment Axon, that amendment is new.
Correct.
Okay,
That
And
one's
so-
up for discussion.
that one's up for discussion. All right. And so if it's my understanding in reading this, that we're saying that this amendment essentially says that what we're already obligated to do, and that is to negotiate contracts.
Yeah,
Negotiate
so
as in like a RFP anyway, right?
Yeah, and so the overarching goal of the bill was that right now, all the individual departments are negotiating with these vendors. And so we're beginning to hear cost complaints because we required all the counties to do this by 2025. And so Delegate Lewis, a few years ago, started asking questions about whether the state should just get into this business or whether it should at least alter its procurement. And so there was a whole work group or informal, or maybe it was formal, I can't remember, but there was a group of stakeholders that met to look at this and ultimately settled on something like this model, which is that the state would enter or negotiate the terms of a larger contract at the request of localities that could then piggyback on and study more. So that's what this is supposed to do, again, without the Axon amendment.
Just while we're in a lull, Mr. Chair, I want to say very briefly that in a couple minutes I'll enter the House garage and I may lose you, but I'll log back in as soon as I can.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, just to make sure I understand, so with respect to the Axon amendment, does it drastically change anything?
Well, I was trying to understand the Axon amendment. I don't think it's necessary. So here's two things it says, or two things that I think it's doing. So one, it would pull data storage, and actually, Chris, is it possible to put the amendment up on the screen?
Yeah,
Why
one
don't
second.
we do that so we can all see what we're dealing with here? As I understand it, and we'll have to do this without the benefit of everyone here, but there was a concern raised by Axon. Again, they are one of the vendors here, one of the major vendors in the state, that this bill as we're moving it, is both about body cameras and data storage. And they're basically want to delete out that second possibility and leave it really about the equipment. But that's never been my understanding of the enterprise here. That there's been a lot of talk about the equipment, the data, the PIA management and discovery issues as being a large cost to the police departments. And they've said since the beginning that it's not just the equipment, that the equipment was actually a small part of it, but the ongoing data and PIA requests and discovery requests was actually a key issue here. So I see we have some stakeholders here. Do any of the stakeholders have any commentary on what Axon is requesting here, which is to try and remove references to the data management and leave this just as the camera and equipment contracting?
So this is Sarah from Mako. I guess my question is, I mean, so that would effectively make storage of footage and cybersecurity of the footage a separate contract that the state would be managing. Is that correct?
That's how I read what they're intending to do. And again, it's never been my understanding that we were talking only about the equipment.
Right, same.
Yeah, and this is Bill George with the Maryland Municipal League. From conversations with some of my municipal police departments, I get the understanding that a lot of times the equipment acquisition and storage sometimes come as a package deal when procuring new contracts or extending or renewing contracts. So I would ask to resist this amendment.
Yeah, my conversations with counties that have gotten some elements of the programs up and running is that is part of their contracts, is the storage and the cybersecurity.
Delegate Boucher.
Thank you, Chairman. Having just finished up being a county commissioner, Carroll County made a move on this very early to save money. And one of the biggest things we're concerned about with all the technology is the reoccurring updates and costs of the technology. That winds up being a big burden. So I'd hate to see the maintenance part of it removed, because I think long-term, it's going to be a big benefit to us to have that purchasing power collectively.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. And this is Sarah from Mako. I would also add that one of the biggest burdens that we've been hearing about is the redaction process. So they're definitely, so having that storage and security element handled separately, I think is certainly helping these programs roll out efficiently with, the resources we have locally.
Okay, I think this is somewhat confirming what my initial impressions were. So I'm comfortable not taking up the amendment unless someone, yes, Claire.
Yes, Delegate Moon, these two documents are a little contradictory. If you look, I think we should look at Delegate Lewis's amendments, his official amendments, which is one of the other attachments to the email.
Yes. Is this language amending old language?
This language is amending the Senate bill as introduced. And it does include the word maintain. And if you'll allow me to just read what it will say the Department of General Services, in coordination with the Department of Information Technology, shall negotiate contracts, at the request of one or more law enforcement agencies with third parties for the acquisition or maintenance of body-worn cameras, equipment, or technology for law enforcement agencies. And then paragraph A2 is the same, is unchanged. And then these amendments add a new paragraph 3 under subsection A that would say the Department of General Services shall notify all law enforcement agencies of the contracts that are being negotiated under paragraph 1 of this subsection by posting the contracts on eMaryland Marketplace Advantage.
Got it. Okay. So it would be, so if we were to take it up, it would be a slightly different iteration in any case. We do have Tim Perry here for Axon. Mr. Perry, I don't know if you want to comment, but it sounds like we were generally of the mind that folks want to keep maintenance in the mix here.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity to speak briefly with you. Again, as you said, Tim Perry, I'm an attorney. We have a government relations firm here in Annapolis, Perry White Ross Jacobson. One of our clients, Axon, one of the leading manufacturers of the body cameras, was pursuing this amendment. The background came out of a conversation we had with Delegate Lewis, the House bill sponsor, and we understood and support, very much so support, the intent of the bill, which I think would give everyone better pricing. And this is something that's very common. Axon sees this in many states nationally. You get economies of scale and you get value pricing by doing it this way. I think the spirit of the amendment really has to do with the management and the maintenance of the data, which is something that is better handled locally. I think that that's also consistent with what you've heard from local governments and law enforcement. It doesn't have anything to do with the procurement methodology that you're pursuing. Again, we wholeheartedly support that and think that that's a good deal for everyone, but it really has to do with the maintenance and the management of the data, which I think Axon and law enforcement agree is something that's better handled locally. So that's kind of the background on the request.
Interesting. All right. Does anyone have any follow-up discussion or thoughts with that context? Delegate Embry.
Just that I understand the concern, but this bill would not preclude that. So this is an opt-in, so right, so a local agency could decide to have separate contracts if they want to. This doesn't force their hand.
Correct. Yeah, that's definitely the case. And I think that they just were hoping that where someone did opt in, it was just clear that what they were opting into was a kind of a piggyback procurement scenario for the benefit of better pricing, but that the local law enforcement unit, to make it more clear that the local law enforcement unit, even where they were opting into the procurement methodology of the procurement vehicle, they would maintain data, domestically, which I think from the conversation I had with Delegate Lewis and my review of the testimony from law enforcement, the law enforcement community broadly, I think the amendment's consistent with what everybody intends and believes. So it's our intent, and it's offered what we would describe as clarifying.
Mr. Chair, with all due respect to the previous speaker, I'm not in favor of the ACOM amendment.
Delegate Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What does the bill sponsor want? Because frankly, it's not a mandatory. It doesn't opt them in or out. It gives them the choice. They already had it. It seems to be clarifying. It came from a discussion about the bill. What does the bill sponsor want?
The sponsor suggested we should proceed without the amendment.
Okay, there you go.
And our concern at Mako is that it would be eliminating the option for the storage and the cybersecurity as part of the full package.
I move the bill without the amendment.
Second.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Perry. That appreciate the context and added explanation.
Yep, I appreciate your consideration. Thank you for bringing me in.
All right, so there's a motion and a second. All in favor of the bill as amended, raise your hand.
Can I just
Oh, yes.
clarify?
Yep.
Are we voting on Delegate Lewis's proposed amendment that is attached? Because his amendments he does want the amendment, the actual amendment document that was attached to the email that says and or maintaining.
Okay, that's his.
Yes, the one he emailed around.
It's attached to Chris's email for the subcommittee meeting. It's what I just described, the one I just read a few minutes ago.
Yes, DGS shall notify, and at the request of one or four law enforcement agencies.
Okay,
Yeah,
I need to make sure. I
It
need
should
to
have
make
been
sure.
emailed out. I think everyone got this by email. Yeah. All right, here we go.
And just to clarify, this was previously adopted by the subcommittee.
Correct.
Move the amendment.
That part was done. So we're on the bill. All in favor with that amendment, the one that was emailed and on the screen, raise your hand.
Aye.
And any opposed? All right. Thank you very much. I believe that's it for today, folks. Stay tuned. We may have some more. All right.
Good one.